Let's say you're going first in a game of Scrabble and you draw these letters. What word should you play? If you're an experienced player, or if you're good at reading video titles before you click them, you might guess the answer, pretzel, using all 7 of your letters for an extra 50 points. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. Now, the real conundrum begins. In Scrabble, your goal is to score points. And while pretzel does score a lot of points right here, doubling the P, shifting the word over just a few squares gets you a very solid 14 extra points on the scoreboard by doubling the Z instead. But we need to revise this goal. Scrabble isn't just about scoring points, it's about scoring more points than your opponent. And if your opponent has an S or blank, they'll have absolutely massive counterplays after this placement. A word with a couple decent scoring tiles will quickly equalize the game. Those same tiles score only 43 points after the other positioning. And there are even worse cases. A bingo will score a whopping 131 points even with all 1-point tiles. There's 100 tiles in the Scrabble set, meaning after you draw pretzel, there are 93 left that your opponent can have. The 4 S's and 2 blanks are the keys here. There's a 38% chance that your opponent will have one of these tiles, immediately nullifying your advantage. Of course, that also means there's a 62% chance that they don't have one. And in these cases, what started as a math question starts to become a question of psychology. When your opponent doesn't have the hook, they're suddenly in a brutal spot. Do they fearlessly leave the spot open and hope to win the race to an S or blank, risking essentially losing the game on the spot if you draw one first? Or do they attempt to block the spot and slowly claw their way back from a more manageable deficit? Let's look at an example. With this rack, a strong Scrabble player might spot the flower zinnia for 30 points. Normally, that's a great play, but it leaves the pretzel's hook wide open. If they're afraid of just letting you score another 100 points, they might make a play like nib instead, effectively blocking the spot. This is actually a great outcome for you. Not only did you get 14 more points for pretzel, you got them to sacrifice 19 of their own points to block. On the other hand, since they're trailing by so much, they have a strong incentive to leave the big spot open. Yes, if you then draw a hook, you'll get an extra 100 points and put yourself in a completely commanding position. But if you don't draw the hook, you'll be forced into the same uncomfortable situation your opponent just faced. And keep in mind that the spot is actually very difficult to block completely, with only a few letters offering strong protection. So, what's the right choice here? Play it safe or take the risk? In other games, computer analysis helps make sense of tricky situations like this. But first, we need to account for the other pretzels lurking in the dictionary. There are actually over 100 words that fit the pretzel pattern in the worldwide Scrabble dictionary. They're plotted on this graph along 3 axes. The first is score gap. This represents how many extra points you're getting for being bold. Some of these words, like bezique, have a safer positioning that offers the exact same number of points, making the bold positioning a completely unnecessary risk. Others, like triazin, give you a significant number of extra points for choosing the aggressive spot, making them more attractive. The next is number of hooks. Some of these moves, like Hazans, can be hooked with relatively few tiles, increasing your odds of making it at least one more turn, when you can then choose whether you want to block the spot or let it stay open. Others, like the aforementioned triazin, take far too many hooks to be useful. In this case, the E-hook of triazine hugely increases the odds that your opponent will hit the spot first, eliminating your advantage. Lastly, face value. The lower the base point value of the word, the less damaging your downside risk is. For example, your opponent S-hooking frothy will result in an extra 75 points for them, whereas S-hooking relaxin only results in an extra 42 points for them. To favor the bold position, computer engines want a large score gap between bold and safe placements, as well as a low number of hooks and a low face value of the word to decrease your downside. Computer engines favor the safe placements for all of the words represented by these yellow dots, but perhaps they would approve of words in this area of the graph. And that is exactly what we see. The engine definitively favors the bold placements of the purple shaded words, and the green shaded words are coin flips between the bold and safe positions. In case you're curious, here is pretzel, right outside the risk approved zone. Let's take seltzer as an example. This word also has a Z in 5th position that allows for a higher scoring and more dangerous positioning. However, the gap between the safe and bold positions is 18 points for seltzer compared to just 14 for pretzel. Not only that, but seltzer already includes an S, reducing your opponent's odds of having a hook to just 33% instead of 38%. For these reasons, both of the best Scrabble computer engines actually recommend the more aggressive placement of seltzer. As a former Scrabble champion, I was stunned by this. I'd normally never play the risky option for any of these words. I'd rather take a more easily defendable 92-point lead than a tenuous 106-point lead. But what if I've been underappreciating the upside of these plays, which effectively win the game on turn 2 much of the time? I was curious what other national and world champions thought about this move, so I asked them. You can easily see the strong skew towards the safer positioning. That makes total sense. These players are strong favorites in almost every game they play and don't need to invite unnecessary risk when they could take a much safer lead and gradually outplay opponents. But there are some exceptions. The current North American champion, Josh Sokol, has established himself as perhaps the most fearless exception to this risk-averse rule. He's known for choosing the riskier options for moves like this, putting maximum pressure on his opponents.
This is a situation that our current understanding of Scrabble doesn't quite cover. I mean, mathematically speaking, I think there's 14 points, some amount like near that where it's potentially not worth it.
But when I asked Josh whether he thinks the advantage of this play is mathematical or psychological, he didn't hesitate.
Psychologically, that's the main reason. It's so difficult to play this position for the person that's behind. I would recommend anybody that doesn't play this sort of positioning, try it out, realize how fun the games become, how weird the games become, and how often they're just gonna win, like, easily. I just want to have fun and not playing it in the correct spot, which is clearly this spot, is just like super not fun. It's sort of like I'm not playing Scrabble for fun anymore, and that's ridiculous. It's a game. I weep for those that wouldn't play this.
As one of those players myself, I'm going to think hard about changing my approach to these opening racks. Of course, drawing a rack like this is extremely rare, so you won't be facing this dilemma very often. I can imagine many of you saying, why does this even matter then? And you're absolutely right. But the Pretzel Conundrum is about more than these specific scenarios. It touches on themes that are core to the game of Scrabble, namely the delicate balance between risk and reward, offense and defense, and even math and psychology. I really like the Pretzel Conundrum because it's a great way to introduce anyone to the mindset behind higher level Scrabble without any need to study the dictionary or digest extremely complicated board positions. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. What will you do the next time you're lucky enough to draw a pretzel? Drop a comment and let me know. And as always, thanks for watching.